Hello everyone and welcome to the session on future skilling of youth in Asia. I am Natasha, Deal Share Manager at AVPN and the MC for this session. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who are not familiar with AVPN, we are a network of funders and resource providers with over 600 members across 32 markets. Our mandate is to move more capital towards impact in Asia by providing social investors like yourself opportunities to connect, learn, and lead. A few housekeeping announcements before moving to the session. We hope that you have joined us through the app, as that allows for a better user experience. If you haven't and would like to, you can find the download links in the links sharing pod. If you do get disconnected or have a bad connection, you can try to log out of the app and log back in. If the problem still persists, you can join us through the Zoom link that you can find on the links sharing pod as well as on the session page. Our tech help desk is available to help sort out any tech issues that you might have. This session will also be recorded and the recording will be available on the website within 24 hours. I would also like to highlight a few features in the room to complement the session today. We will be having a moderated Q&A segment towards the end of this session, but we do invite you to start sharing any questions for the speakers as we go along the session. You can do this in the question for panelists box that you will see as we proceed. There will be interactive elements during this session, and we do encourage you to take part in those. To continue chatting with the speakers and your fellow delegates, you can do so through the AVPN connector in the links sharing pod. It's great to see so much engagement on social media, and we invite you to continue doing so. Take some screenshots of the room and share interesting insights and sound bites from the speakers and tag us using AVPN 2020. From this session, we hope that you take away a deeper understanding of the importance as well as the challenges and barriers in future skilling the youth of the region, and also look at how key stakeholders are working to address youth unemployment in Asia and discuss opportunities for collaboration to scale social investment for future skilling of youth in the region. If you would like to access some resources and reading materials from the speakers, please refer to the download resources board. Credit Suisse has conducted a landscape mapping on future skills in the region, and you can find the report here, along with resources from Edelgave Foundation. And to lead us in this very important discussion, I am very pleased to introduce our moderator, Nagma Mullah, Chief Operating Officer, Edelgave Foundation. Over the last 8 years, Nagma has enabled growth and scale of Edelgave's model of collaborative philanthropy. Edelgave is one of India's leading grant-making organizations, but also a philanthropic manager, advisor, and partner to institutional as well as individual grant makers in India. Nagma helps foster strategic partnerships within the philanthropic network. She has also developed and nurtured 2 large collaboratives with diverse stakeholders that are working with some of the most vulnerable communities to support education, livelihoods, and empowerment of women. Welcome, Nagma. The mic is yours. Nagma, I think you're on mute. If you can unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Hello, I'm sorry. I made the first rookie mistake in spite of reminding myself. But I hope you can hear me now. So thank you very much, Natasha, for that introduction, and welcome to everyone who's joined this discussion. It is always a pleasure to represent Edelgave at AVPN. Over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been witness to how this network has grown and enabled partnerships. It is an incredible platform for organizations such as ours who have capacities to leverage these networks. Like Natasha kindly mentioned, we operate as philanthropic managers and advisors to philanthropists, and therefore have very strong grassroots needs. The complexity of issues we're speaking about today, we find as Edelgave is underappreciated, and most of you who've joined us will agree with that. Especially in times of the COVID crisis, where we have participated with some incredible organizations for relief, the struggles of youth in particular are facing, the struggles that youth in particular are facing have not even been discussed, and we all can understand why that is happening. That is why this discussion is very, very important. To introduce the session to you, youth employment is a major, major challenge in Asia. In the recent years, it has received growing interest by funders, governments, non-profits, due to the economic and social cost to society. Future skills empower the disadvantaged youth to fulfill their potentials. They provide them with access to education, skills, and livelihoods. Youth are therefore able to gain decent employment through formal jobs or entrepreneurship and lead productive lives. This session aims to bring together key stakeholders who are actively working to address youth unemployment in Asia, to showcase their approach and discuss the challenges and opportunities in scaling and social investment for scaling youth in Asia. With that, Natasha, can we pause and just take a look at the findings of the poll that was conducted while we were all waiting? We are, like I was saying, I'm so convinced that everyone who's been kind enough to join us today is deeply committed to this cause and the sector, because the question that we'd asked just before, while we were waiting, was that imagine your work 20 years from now, and in a summary, describe what it looks like. And we can see some amazingly insightful, very sensitive visions for the future. Over the next 20 years, we've heard terms like flexibility, adaptation, collaboration. But what stood out for me as I was reading all these responses was some of the key things that are actually our hope that they will pull us through this time of crisis. Things like focus on leadership, transformation, while lifting voices from grassroots. We've seen that time and again in your responses. We saw cross-disciplinary focuses. We saw technology, collaboration, and innovation as key vectors that people have described they'd like to see embodied in their own work. So congratulations to all of you. We've now established that we are a group that are very aligned together, and I hope the discussion that is going to follow now is of value to all of you, and we can make this discussion extremely rich for all of you. With that, let me introduce you to our first panelist. Lisa Green is someone, again, I had the pleasure of meeting time and again over the past few AVPNs. She is Head of Corporate Citizenship Asia Pacific at Credit Suisse, based out of Hong Kong, also the Executive Director of Credit Suisse APAC Foundation. She is responsible for overseeing regional grant making and the management and impact assessment of Credit Suisse philanthropy portfolio. She also has oversight of Credit Suisse India CSR portfolio, and the corporate citizenship team initiates and runs the bank's volunteering program in the region as well, engaging its staff in a range of skill-based and hands-on community engagement. Lisa, my warm welcome. Please join us. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Nagma. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you very clearly. Thank you so much for taking time out, Lisa. Informally, I've always heard you speak so passionately about your work. Formally, we know about the incredible depth and breadth of the work that Credit Suisse has participated in. But in the context of today's discussion, your immense body of work around future skills is very relevant. Can you take us a little bit through what really it means, or what does the program look like, and how have you approached this? What is the vision that drives it?
Sure. And before I start, I'd also just like to say that I'm delighted to be here on this panel with you, Nagma, with Sebastian, who we know as well is a partner of Credit Suisse, and also Nicola. And thank you to AVPN for putting on such a fantastic conference amidst many challenges. I think it's been successful so far. So wish we could all be together in person. But to answer your question, Nagma, maybe just to take a step back and give an overview of what corporate citizenship means at Credit Suisse. So we focus on three areas: future skills, financial inclusion and financial education. And if we see that as a continuum and we look specifically at young people, our aim is to be able to support programs that equip them with the skills they need for the future, then also empower them through financial literacy, financial education, so they are empowered and informed earners, spenders, and savers, and then also be able to give them support an environment where they can access financial services that are tailored to them and that are inclusive in their nature, as well as for other populations. And if we break down future skills in terms of how we see it, we look at beneficiaries, we look at structures, and we also look at addressing barriers. So our support for our partner NGOs, obviously we're not an implementing foundation, but we are funders. Our support is to look at NGOs that are running programs that give the skills and the tools needed by youth, by these beneficiaries to function. We also look at supporting and strengthening the structures that provide them with this education and the professionals who deliver this. And then we thirdly look at addressing the barriers that these young people face in skilling themselves for the future. For the more underprivileged, marginalized youth and ways of supporting them more efficiently. I think is my, okay, great. I would just then add that Credit Suisse is very committed, specifically in the Asia Pacific region, to youth and young people and future skills. This is where 60% of the young people in the world are live and operate. And we also know that the unemployment rate of youth in Asia Pacific is around 10.5%, which is about double the unemployment rate of the rest of the working population. So it's clearly a need. And I'm also very proud to say that this year we launched a standalone foundation in Asia Pacific, the Credit Suisse APAC Foundation, that is specifically there to show our commitment to the region as a financial institution, to our clients, but also a commitment to the communities where we operate in the Asia Pacific region. And that foundation encompasses a lot of our legacy grants that are very future skills focused, around 70%. We've also been able to make some very exciting first grants, and one of those is to deepen our partnership with Friends International. So wonderful to have Sebastien on this panel, and we will be funding the extension of their Futures program for youth across 6 Southeast Asia countries. And just also to add, of course, we have a strong portfolio in India as well, as you know, Nagma. Yes. We've worked on that, and we have some very strong future skills partnerships there. So I'll pause there, and we can continue.
No, it always fascinates me how an organization such as yours, that is present in so many countries, needs to be agile as well as very strong. You know, you have to have this blend of a robust structure, which also has flexibility and adaptability to the local environment. But so specifically to answer that question, and I know we will also be asking that to Sebastien, but as a funder of programs that are across geographies, we know there are some issues around skilling that are common, but then there are some that are very, very nuanced, and the response to those nuances can determine whether these programs work or not. How do you, in the designing of your future skills program, how have you factored in these differences and similarities?
Yes, I think you've touched on something that's always a big challenge for us, because we have a blend of developed markets and of developing markets with very, very wide array of needs that we are trying to cater to within our foundation. I think that we really try and always get back to our 2 commitments, whether we're granting in Japan, whether we're granting in India, whether we're granting in Vietnam. or any of the other countries. And the two real key pillars are, first of all, commitment to actually the field of future skilling and building that capacity of the field as well, and being a collaborative player. And the second one is really the commitment to our partners. And if I can just elaborate a little bit on what we mean by commitment to the field. When we really undertook the road of future skilling as part of our portfolio, we wanted to go from a research and evidence-based approach, and we commissioned another AVPN member, Just Cause Consulting in Singapore, to create a landscape mapping study for us that is also a resource that everyone can download. And this really gave us an insight into what are the needs in the region. We looked at 8 specific country geographies as well. And that really helped us to look at the gaps that we could then move into as funders. So that's something we try and apply across the region. And we also hope that it's a practical step towards building a community of funders in future skills. We know there's a lot of excitement, a lot of momentum behind future skills funding, and we hope that there can also be a focus on that evidence as well and research. And the second thing is we also collaborated with another AVPN member, Empower, to fund a shared learning community of 10 future skills organizations, and also then do some very in-depth capacity building for 4 of those future skills partners. So we really hope that that is a way that we can not just do our own funding, but also contribute towards broader discussions and funding. And as a corporate partner, we also able to offer the support of our staff. So beyond the financial support, we can offer our staff to help the youth as role models, as mentors, and also to help the organizations that we support across the geographies with skills-based volunteering.
That's fascinating. That's really cool. In fact, there are some words that I started noting down which kept coming up while you were speaking, which I would really like to appreciate, because in your whole, the approach that you've taken, I kept hearing research-based, collaboration, shared learning, capacity building, but I also heard a lot of communities, and there was so much focus on the youth himself or herself. Which is always good to see, a very participative approach where you're looking for partners with expertise. And I think the future in philanthropy will be a lot better if we follow this kind of approach. So thank you very much. And I'm going to pause with you for now, because we'll come back. I have many more questions, and I'm sure people are typing in questions for you as well. But let me move to Nicola from Dubai Cares. Welcome, Nicola. Welcome to this conversation. And I'm really, I know we've not met in person, unlike Lisa, but I've been very delighted to go through and read up on Dubai Cares and what we always know a lot, but for this conversation. And we see what a broad portfolio Dubai Cares has, and you've been overseeing a lot of it. And you're also managing a significant portfolio and partnerships in India. And there is a very active focus on technical and vocational education and training for youth, which has been going on for the last few years. So as someone who's been overseeing all of this, and can you, for starters, take us through the deep commitment that Dubai Cares has, but how have you put this model together? What is it that led you into crafting of this model? Hi, Nicola.
You just cracked up. Keep going. I think you're back.
Okay. No, did you hear my question? Should I just repeat the question quickly?
No, I think I just caught the end of it. Thank you. I don't know which one of us froze, but I got it. Thanks, Nagma. And just to echo Lisa, just thank you to AVPN for welcoming Dubai Cares onto the panel, and really great as well to hear more both from Nagma and Lisa so far, and a lot of synergy actually with what Lisa presented from the Credit Suisse perspective. So a definite follow-up conversation, I'm sure. So just to take again a step back, looking at Dubai Cares more broadly, and before I get into the TVET aspect, So Dubai Cares, for those that might not be aware, is a philanthropic foundation, very much focused and aligned with SDG 4. So looking at equitable access to quality learning and education for children and youth. We've been around since 2007, and we support programs on all aspects of that education and learning journey. So we support programs focusing on early childhood development, access to quality primary and secondary education, and in recent years have kind of started to take a deeper focus as well, looking at youth skills, recognizing how important it is to bridge the gap between basic education and the world of work. I guess our model as a foundation is very much to work through local and international partners on the ground. So we have a range of partners. I can come back to some in more detail. But looking specifically at our youth portfolio, the way that we try to frame our portfolios is very much taking a kind of triangular approach. So we fund a number of programs on the ground, rooted in the communities, responding directly to the needs that they've identified. Secondly, we look very much at global partnerships and networks, where often the advocacy and policy piece might sit. And thirdly, we invest in research. So the youth portfolio, how that comes to life, is that we're supporting, for example, a TVET program in Tajikistan that launched just this year. We also are looking at a TVET program in Ecuador. I know that's out of the region, but it's important because we're drawing key learnings from it, that has a very specific focus on sustainable tourism and hospitality and strengthening in-school TVET programs there. That's with VVOB. The Tajikistan one was with Mercy Corps. We're looking at a number of in-school entrepreneurship programs through partners like Educate and Teach a Man to Fish. And we're looking at employability skills for vulnerable young girls through Plan International in the Philippines. So that's kind of where we're embedded on the ground through our partners. And then at a global level, we're partnering with Generation Unlimited, who many of you will be familiar with. I know they've recently launched through UHA. I might have got the pronunciation wrong, in India. And our financial support there is very much focused around portable qualifications, remote learning and digital connectivity. And then the final piece of that triangle I mentioned, looking very much at the broader research piece, is through a partnership that we have with the World Economic Forum, linked to what they call their Reskilling Revolution platform, which is very much where their Education 4.0 and skills and future skills piece sits. So that's very much kind of the broad model, which is echoed in our other portfolios at Dubai Cares. I hope that helps frame our work broadly.
Yes, it frames it very well, and it gives a very good idea of how much thought you've put into this portfolio. It's not simply funding. There's a lot of designing that has gone, purposeful designing that has gone in it. And what caught my attention in particular was when you were talking about portable learning and digital connectivity. Given what is happening right now, we've all across the world, and especially in countries where digital connectivity may not be reaching the last mile, we're all shocked, obviously, with what has happened, but also realizing that this may be the key to getting out of what is staring us in the face. What adaptability do you think you will have to adjust to, or what kind of adaptation would your program need, or are you already thinking of it, or you're waiting and watching it? How are you responding to this, what you're seeing around you?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a key conversation for all of us and all of our partners right now. And I think we've really been, as a funding organization, our priority is very much to support what our partners identify as the right solutions in the context of broader global networks that we mentioned. We can look more at the kind of advocacy. But I think critically looking at how some of our partners have adapted. In India, this isn't a youth-specific program, but I've been really struck by how Pratham have adapted their work very quickly through through WhatsApp, but also specifically through SMS, recognizing that connectivity is limited. And they managed, I learned this week that they're still through 20 states, households, and a lot of that work is being kind of embedded in state government outreach as well. And I think we're seeing some of that echoed in how our youth partners are also responding. I mentioned our program working on sustainable tourism with DVOB. They've managed to adapt a lot of their trainings through webinars, but specifically also they're providing support to the trainers and the teachers through WhatsApp. I think what we really have to remember in all of this is the challenge is that because of limited access to connectivity, there's the danger that the inequities can be exacerbated. And how can we make sure that in the short term, programs are being adapted through a range, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's radio, whether it's online, that as many children and youth are being reached as possible, and that in the medium to long term, we're taking a much deeper look at how content can be adapted to an online setting, and how can the global community take a deeper dive and look at the importance of digital connectivity and the role that governments and private sector and service providers and those on the ground need to play to make sure that all young people can access remote learning.
I'm so glad you covered these issues, Nicola, because we have to, while it is very normal to think that technology will pull us through, but the factor that most of the marginalized and very marginalized don't even have access to it, and the inequity that we are going to risk widening will be very, very high. And I doubly appreciate it because it comes from you as a funder, because Sebastian now, and I will move to him very quickly, will be talking to us, from a more closer, he's in it, he's watching it from a very, very close perspective. But more and more of funders also need to be saying it, because it just reassures the ecosystem that we are cognizant, aware, and we will react to it. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. So I'm very, very delighted now to welcome our third speaker, Sebastian Maroth. And he is the founder and the executive director of Friends International. And extensive amount of work across Southeast Asia, ensuring dignified and gainful employment for young people and caretakers, building better futures, not only for them, but for their country too. Welcome, Sebastian. Welcome to this conversation. Very happy to have you.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you indeed to AVPN for having organized this very important topic on youth and employment. I'm sorry I'm not here in person. I like to interact with people.
Yes, I think we're missing that a lot. AVPN used to be that place where we could all converge and learn so much. So we're all missing the in-person experience, but nevertheless, we're so happy that you can join this conversation and give us a very first-hand perspective of what you're observing and what you've been seeing before and during these times. While I was reading up on Friends International, Sebastian, I saw the extensive amount of focus that you put into even describing that in your planned initiatives, there is this very strong consideration to soft skills, hard skills, psychosocial skills, basically looking at not simply employability, but also looking at how you can ensure value to the whole individual. And in the entire language and narrative, there was so much focus on individual and country, individual and community, which is very nice to read as well. But again, I go back to the basic design of it. When you create a comprehensive solution across countries, Lisa told us, the funders view about it, but you as someone who designs it and executes it, how do you even put something like this together?
Yeah, it's a very important point. Just one step back, Friends International is a social enterprise, and we work with marginalized youth, children and their families, and we do a lot of things. We do protection, obviously, we do the social reintegration, which means back to school for the younger ones, employment for the youth and the parents, family reintegration. But we also know that we cannot do this alone, so we have to work with a range of other partners and create networks and coordination. That's how you become stronger. But also we need to involve all the actors of society, and this is why we have the Child Safe program. So we're trying to have a holistic response to the issue. Employment for us has always been at the core of our work since 95. It's been really important. It has evolved with the changes in the countries where we operate a lot to have become what we now call Futures. There's a big standalone program for youth employment with attention to vulnerable and marginalized youth. And as Lisa mentioned, it's going to be expanded with the collaboration with Credit Suisse, which is very, very exciting. So we created this system, if you want, shared with many organizations in the region, and it's started in Cambodia, expanded in Laos, in Thailand, Indonesia, and Myanmar. We have partners in Vietnam. So really we try to cover as much as possible the region, and we collaborate with obviously key partners of ours, the corporate sector, who are going to hire all these young people. And to go back to your question, when we deal with marginalized populations, you have to have an approach that cannot be a blanket one. That's what you do with the general population, and that's what the government education does, and it's great for the 80% of the population. The 20% that need special attention for whatever reason, they need a more tailored approach, and that's what we're trying to do, and it's a difficult balance of reaching as many people as possible while creating a very tailored approach. Different people, different needs. So indeed, we have soft skills, we have hard skills, we have psychosocial support, we have life skills education, job placement, leading to job placement and support. And every person needs a different level of intervention. So the best way to do this is to just give you an example. We had a case relatively recently, a young woman in Cambodia, let's call her, I don't know, Kuntia. And so she has this really tough background. So she was orphaned very early on. She was taken out of school to work in the fields by her sister and brother-in-law in order to survive. Therefore, she dropped out of school. She married very young, a distant relative, and that didn't work out, so broke down. And when you're in this situation in the countryside, she decided to migrate to the city to hope for a better future. So she arrives in Phnom Penh with no skills, no education, no connections. And she was lucky because she found a job in a bakery, but she got a $35 a month salary, which is totally abusive. That was clearly not enough, so she found a boyfriend. She started drugs. She lost the boyfriend. She lost the job. Then eventually, the typical problem: sex work became the option for 6 months. She was arrested by the government, and that's when she arrived at France. And with this kind of background, we need to look at all the issues, and this is why we need to look at the psychosocial support that she needs. What do we need to work on? The relapse prevention, the emotional trauma, because otherwise she won't be able to keep a job or even get a job. The hard skills she needs education because she never went to school. She needs the soft skills in order to be able to operate in society. So she needs all of that. Well, she graduated eventually from France in 2019, and she got a job in a local cafe, and she got a great salary, about 10 times what she was making in a bakery, $370 a month, which is a good salary, good start salary in Cambodia. And that was before COVID. Because since then, she lost most of her income, and that's the problem.
But that leads me to the next question. That life is tough enough with no COVID, and now COVID happens, and a lot of these youth are now what are some of the new vulnerabilities that you are observing and what you see us all having to work around in the future?
Well, we need to look at the impact, and the impact has been tremendous. I mean, just in general, it impacted some of the pillar of the economy of the countries where we operate. Say, for example, the garment industry, where they didn't get the material from China and had to stop production, and now they don't have a market anymore. And about 32% of the young people we placed have lost their jobs already in that sector. Tourism is the second one, which has been devastating. The hotels are closed, the restaurants are closed, casinos, you like it or not, but they were hiring a lot of people, all closed. And there, across our programs, we're about 36% employment loss. But in some areas where tourism is even more important, say Siem Reap, for example, we're at 42%. Bangkok is 53%. And Laos, because of Luang Prabang and those areas that are really tourism dependent, we're talking 65%. And these are long-term issues. Some are shorter shocks. So, for example, the personal care industry, the beauty salon, hairdressing, and so on, they got about 50% of the young people lost their jobs. But we're also confident that these will come back faster. But what we see is that the people who were employed lost their job and immediately income. The poorest people in the communities immediately felt the impact. And for the middle class, it's going to be a slow burn, and slowly they will see the impact on their own income. It's going to take time, and they don't see it necessarily now. And on the field, we've seen an increase of sex workers on the streets. We have seen a huge increase of alcohol consumption. We've seen a huge stress in families and violence, domestic violence, violence against the children. And globally, it has moved the line of marginalization and risk. And it has the line was moving away from risk and reduction of numbers of people marginalized, and this is now pushing the line back, and we see a huge number of young people that before were not coming to see us because they felt secure enough, coming to see us. Students from universities, we just had 83 students registering our soft skills training. We have never seen this. So there's really a change and an overall stress happening across the region.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's so sad to hear you articulating it very well, and we need to hear this. And while we move into the Q&A, Sebastian, I'll just take up, because you are speaking of the same issue. There's a question that's been directed to you by Jacqueline Chen, and she's asking what type of psychosocial support do young people require in your project? You know, what are the elements of the psychosocial support?
We look at it on a little wide definition of psychosocial. It can include health, it can include counseling and emotional support, it can include housing, it can include dealing with issues in the families. It does include all the issues linked to drugs, and drugs is a devastating element in our populations and even the middle class, and it has to be put out there. Alcohol now, because drugs is going down, it's too expensive, they're replacing it with alcohol, so that's why we see the alcohol increase. So there's all the rehab and detoxification that we need to work around. So there's the entire work that we need to do. It can be housing, it can be giving them a bicycle or a way to go from where they live to a place of training or a place of employment. So the support is multifaceted and needs to be, again, very tailored to it's not, when you write a proposal to donors, you have to be very blanket, but the reality cannot be.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And Sebastian, we're going to come back to you. We're moving into the Q&A session, and I'm going through a lot of these questions that the audience have kindly been writing in. And Lisa, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you with a very interesting question that's come from Evi Guzali. And she's asking you, what is the most challenging youth skill project that you have encountered as a funder? So if you would like to take that.
Sure, thank you. I was just thinking about that question. I think maybe to echo what Sebastian is picking up, when we are funding youth programs for the most marginalized, that is often the hardest for us, because so much of the circumstances that are surrounding these youth are beyond our control and sometimes beyond their control. So we're dealing with protection issues, we're dealing with access issues, even physically, being able to access training centers, etc., problems in the home. I think that becomes for us very challenging, being able to reach the youth through who are facing these very difficult positions.
Yeah, I can
maybe if I can,
yes, please,
if I
go
can
ahead.
just elaborate a little. Yes, just a little bit more on what we've also found as gaps in terms of these are challenging situations to fund future skilling for youth, and these are gaps in the region. And one key area is for differently abled youth, learning challenged youth. And we're very fortunate to have some very strong partnerships both in our India portfolio as well as in our APAC Foundation portfolio that really are focusing on how do we adapt skilling programs for youth who are challenged in terms of their abilities or in terms of their learning abilities, and trying to find organizations that really value the other strengths that those youth have and can take those strengths and adapt their programs and produce, as outcomes, young people who have been able to develop in areas that mainstream youth have not been able to develop. And we do know that this is a very key underfunded and key area for within future skills. And then I just say the other really key area, and Sebastian mentioned it, is that focus on the demand side. It's easier to train, but it's not as easy to place. And a training program that does not have the placement component and that does not incorporate what employers are really looking for. So bringing out trainees at the end of the day who are ready on day one to start working. That is key to any TVET program or any skilling program, and we really need to look at private sector involvement more and more into these programs.
Yeah, and that's why you saying it makes a big difference, Lisa. I've appreciated this earlier as well with you, that within employability, within future skills, Credit Suisse has always been highlighting the differently abled segment as well, who we tend to completely ignore while we speak of this kind of work. And when we talk about future skill or employability, we tend to forget. And you bringing the spotlight to it becomes so much more important, because that's how private sector participation can be really enabled. And Nicola, I would request for you to come in for a while now, because it's very relevant for you to maybe step in and talk about Rewired a little bit, because it may help with some of the questions that I'm seeing here. So can you take us a little bit through Rewired, please? Okay, I think Nicola is having a bit of a technical issue. So while she is trying to get back, Sebastian, there is also another question that we are getting for you, which is from Meghmala Sengupta from India. And she's asking you how we can create, or how and if we can create experiential learning methodologies online. Have you factored that in, and would you have insights on that?
Yeah, thank you. We have to reinvent everything on how we operate, and we have indeed developed our training online, and it works extremely well for a certain population, the ones who have access to internet. And so adapting, making it happen, reorganizing the entire curriculum, that was done extremely fast and launched quite successfully. The second thing we're doing is also using cell phones, which are also easier for most young people to have access to. But to echo what was said before, there is indeed the risk of inequities coming from this, where more people will be left behind because they don't have the right access to the tools. And this is why in some of the centers in the poorest communities we have opened it to young people where they have access to internet and online education for the younger ones that the government is running, but also our own soft skills. So we're definitely going in that direction. And we need to be very careful not to lose anyone on the way.
Thank you so much. That's a very good response to that question. And Nicola, I see you're back, and you can hear me. Yes, I was just, I think, about the time you dropped off, I was trying to pull you back into this conversation through Rewired. And would you like to just take us a little bit through that? And I think you're
Sure, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, not at all.
You should be, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, great. The irony of discussing digital connectivity as I disappear from the screen. Apologies, everybody. Yes, it's a really good opportunity this conversation is so relevant to an event that Dubai Cares is working on and that we would love to welcome everybody to as part of Expo 2020 that some of you will be familiar with. Expo 2020 has been put back to 2021, but still one of the key events that we will be working on is a global education summit called Rewired that is looking at reshaping the narrative around education, which I think, as we all kind of feel personally, professionally, every day is such a fundamental conversation to be having right now. So dates are to be confirmed, but it's likely to be towards the end of 2021. But Rewired will be a platform kind of facilitated by Dubai Cares, Expo, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation here in the UAE. And critically for this conversation, one of the three focus areas is going to be around youth skills and the future of work. The other two focus areas, also very relevant, are around education financing and innovation in education. And I think the conversation that we're having today kind of really helps frame some of the priorities that we're going to be looking at as part of that youth skills and future of the work day, whether that's looking at shifts towards remote learning, whether it's looking at different approaches to certification, knowing that in the youth skills space that's such a critical and high cost and therefore limiting area. Looking particularly at the role of private sector and programs and private sector partners that have managed to kind of bridge that gap in the need and demand side. And so listening to Sebastian and listening to Lisa and their own examples, that kind of blend of the role of private sector and then through Sebastian, that reality of what it is like for a young person on the ground. And it's exactly that kind of conversation, and to really challenge the way that we're all thinking and some of the solutions that we can think through. And I think kind of through networks like AVPN and a lot of partners like those that are attending, we really want to make sure that the discussion is inclusive and representative and disruptive. So we will update the AVPN network, and we're also hoping and are grateful to AVPN for having paved the way to have some kind of remote summit towards the end of this year as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'll go back to Sebastian now. Sebastian, you have a query from India on whether there is any plan for Friends International to enter India. I think it was in Bihar. Are there any future plans? But I will also join it with another question that I'm hearing from Jamaluddin, who's saying, do you have any thoughts, or are there any kind of ideas on upskilling or reskilling government workers in particular? Because you were speaking of the government industry collapsing. Is there something that, I know that these questions, and I think we need to call it, we need to also acknowledge that this is all happening in the now. So we may all not have perfect answers, but you're also seeing these problems crop up, and garment industries clearly collapsed from the perspective of the worker. So is there any thought on upskilling and reskilling, and is there any thought of presence in India?
To answer first the India question, we love to work in partnership with other organizations, and we are looking to learn from others and share as much as we can. So if anyone, any organization in India is interested in running such a project, we would be delighted to be part of helping out and sharing and discussing on how to do this. Establishing ourselves is probably not needed because you have a lot of excellent organizations already in place. No need to duplicate. It's better to reinforce the existing. So that would be my approach. And would love to if someone wants to introduce me to an organization in India or elsewhere. Our models are actually being adopted we're using our models in Switzerland. So it works with adaptation anywhere, and it can be, and it's designed so it's easy to be taken on by anyone. So yes, by any means. The question about the garment factory workers is bothering me a lot. I mean, the issue is bothering me a lot, not the question, the issue. Because a lot of the girls we see now coming on the streets in this freelance prostitution, on the street prostitution, are from the garment factories. So a lot of them have gone back to their homes in the countryside. And we honestly don't know what's happening there, and we're really afraid of a huge increase in migration as soon as the borders open again. A huge problem of forced marriage. We do have a lot of trafficking for marriage with countries like China, for example, where you have a deficit of wives, and the risk is just going up really, really strongly. So yes, there is a big need. We are addressing it as we go. We haven't yet developed a full strategy because we are a little overwhelmed by all the needs that are coming to us. But there is definitely a need to go for it on a wider scale and look at the next jobs. And I think the point I would like to make in this setting today is it's all about flexibility. We need to be flexible in our own projects because the markets are going to change, are changing very fast. The needs of the market are going to change. Is the garment factory the industry of tomorrow? We don't know. So yes, all these women will have to be retrained and replaced in all the new upcoming industries. And we see already, for example, in Thailand, there are some industries that have picked up in the times of crisis, and we were able to place people immediately, like delivery and supermarkets and so on. So it's opportunistic, but it's going to be a major change in the economy overall. That's the flexibility for us as a program. But for this, we need the flexibility of our support. And that means the donors. We need the flexibility of the money that allows us to change as we go and to be creative and say, well, that's not working, or this is already finished, but that's the next one. We need to be able to change. And we have, thankfully, a lot of very flexible donors, but I'm turning to any of the more institutional donors in the crowd, if any. The structures are so strict that changing is very difficult, and we are in a time of uncertainty, of moving, and that's the definition of what's needed today. And to be totally honest, yes, it's a crisis, but it's an opportunity. It's amazing where we are at, because we can look at it saying, oh my God, it's terrible, and we do, because we see the individual, but we see also what could be. And what could be, we have the chance, we have the opportunity now to reinvent the next employment. We're here to be able to reinvent the next training, because to be honest, it wasn't very good, was it? overall. Everyone's complaining about youth training, and then the company saying, oh, we have to retrain everyone. It's true. And so it's a time to be able to rethink. We're sitting on a great opportunity, and it's time to be bold and creative and adventurous and to put the support that organizations need to be able to do this behind us, because otherwise we'll continue the same and nothing's going to happen.
I'm almost tempted to close right now, because I don't know how I'm going to be able to close after. No, I mean, it's phenomenal. You've just put a set of things out there. You've called it out, and I'm sure everyone is hearing and feeling what you're trying to say. And it's just the need of the hour, and you said it very plainly. So thank you very, very much. Now I'm very cognizant of the moving clock. So Lisa and Nicola, if there are any last comments from you, I'd be very happy to hear from you before we finally move to closure. But Lisa, if I may go with you first, anything that you would like to have the audience, thinking about as we close this session?
Well, I think, sorry, my webcam is not working, but I think Sebastian has laid down a challenge for us, and certainly as funders, I absolutely agree with him. Obviously, we face certain challenges as well, but maybe just to stop on this note, in that we are not changing our commitment to partners or to the developing and entrenching future skilling in Asia. That is something that will not change whether there's a COVID crisis or not. Our strategic focus remains the same, but we understand that the funding is only part of the way, and that we are not on the ground. Our partner organizations are on the ground. The needs of our beneficiaries, of their beneficiaries, are changing every day. So we need to, as he said, we need to step in and be the support, offer the flexibility. Some of our programs are actually reaching out to us because there are hunger issues with some of the beneficiaries, there are access issues. And if we are not flexible in our funding addressing those issues, there will be no program. And for many of our partners, there is no program at the moment because of things being stalled. So yes, it is definitely our responsibility to do that, and to let them use the funds that we have granted them in the most efficient way to get out of the situation and address these new opportunities, as Sebastian mentioned.
Thank you, Lisa. Nicola, any last comments from you?
No, I mean, I think Sebastian and Lisa have captured it well, and I think the important thing that we need to recognize right now is that it's such an unusual opportunity in a strange way, that the number of countries that are facing the same challenge, and the opportunity that we have to capture data around what we're learning, what's learning well and why. As Sebastian mentioned, the skilling space is being kind of turned on its head. It's going to shape things and make things happen differently. And some of the innovations that have happened in response to COVID will now continue to scale up and take programs to a scale that we might never have imagined was feasible. The role of teachers and trainers will be re-looked at differently, because if a young person can access information online, then what is the role of the teacher? The role of the teacher is then how to use and process that information, rather than how to access it and what the information is. The role of the school beyond just the teaching and the education, the role of the school and the community. So I think the current situation is forcing us all differently, and I will be committed to have the learners to then form that we might do take forward to the new.
Thank you so. Thank you each one of you, because not just fun conversation because of that you've just put together, and we have a set of learnings that we all must really take home. But also to the audience, I will really pull at the message that Sebastian left us with, that this is a time that we need flexibility more than we ever needed. And it needs flexibility of all kinds, flexibility of approach, flexibility of funding, flexible empathy as well, because we can't have selective empathy too. So if things have been disrupted to such a level, maybe we all need to start focusing on the future that we want instead of the past that was taken away from us. And that is probably the only way we can start building. Again, some of the key things that give me a lot of hope from this conversation is I heard flexibility so often. I heard funder participation, private sector, development sector, participation, sensitivity from there, a lot of that. While I close on this thought, there's another thought that I have. The intersectionality of the issues that we are facing are staring us in the face, and we must recognize it. When we were hearing about youth who have lost their job opportunities, their employment, we also heard about the number of women there, then the sex trafficking that they were susceptible to, which takes us to a very different bucket of the silos that we've identified for ourselves. And, when we think of skilling, we don't think of sex trafficking. When we think of sex trafficking, we don't link it with education. But in the solutioning that we all put together, not only must the funder NGO divide be blurred, but we also may want to blur these little buckets of sectors and silos that we've created while we design solutions. And with that thought, I will thank each one of you for joining us for this conversation. The panelists, you've been incredible. The participants, you've been incredible. And thank you to the AVPN team from all of us. You've made us rehearse, go through everything again and again. It was as flawless as we could manage it, given that we're all in different continents and trying to work on networks that are exhausted. So thank you very much to the entire team that's been working behind the scenes to make this happen. And with that, I will sign off. And over to you, Natasha.
Thank you so much, Nagma, Lisa, Nicola, and Sebastian, for that very insightful session and for the work that you're all doing in empowering and preparing the youth in Asia for the workforce of the future. Thank you once again. We have now come to the end of this session, and this session is made possible with the kind support of our lead partners, Chandler Foundation, Stockholm Environment Institute, and Iran Prize Foundation, and our impact partner, Credit Suisse. To continue chatting with the speakers and fellow delegates in this session, please make full use of the AVPN connector. We also invite you to visit the AVPN Hub and explore some of the thematic platforms there. Do share your highlights of this session on social media, and remember to tag us using the hashtag AVPN2020. Up next, the session, Islamic Capital for Impact Pathway to Achieving the SDGs in Asia, will be starting now at 3 p.m. Singapore time. Before we officially close the session, please do share your thoughts on a quick question in the closing poll. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.